morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar sponsored by the HIBAR Research Alliance, also known as the HRA. I'll be the moderator of today's one-hour event, and I'm joining you from the University of British Columbia, where I support the development of research partnerships for our Faculty of Applied Science. So I'm also really eager to learn more about the approach that this group has taken to build such deep and lasting working relationships. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging that the land on which UBC is situated is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people, and we're so grateful to live and work together in this beautiful place. I would encourage you to add any land acknowledgements from where you're joining us today in the chat box. So this is the 21st webinar in our series for researchers, administrators, and others who are interested in what we call highly integrative, basic, and responsive research. Our previous webinars are available for viewing on HRA website, which can be found at hibar-research.org, which will also be popped in the chat box here for you. So before our featured presentation today, I'll just take a minute to explain the structure of today's event. So we'll begin with a brief overview of the HIBAR research concept from Dr. Lauren Whitehead, Director of the HRA. Next, Dr. Majid Mohseni and Irving LeBlanc will spend about 25 minutes speaking about their journey toward delivering sustainable solutions for water health equity in Indigenous and rural communities. Then we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A, followed by an opportunity for Majid and Irving to offer any final takeaways to the group. Okay, so to kick us off with a brief overview of the HIBAR research concept, please welcome Dr. Lauren Whitehead. Lauren is the director of the HRA, as well as UBC's special advisor on entrepreneurship, innovation, and research, and also a professor in our Department of Physics and Astronomy. Lauren, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kara. It's a pleasure to be here and to have a chance to say just a few words. I'll be quite brief. So I'll be speaking really quite briefly about the HIBAR research and the HIBAR Research Alliance. And I'll start with the idea of research projects with this name HIBAR, which have the characteristic that they embrace two key dualities. The first of those dualities is that they integrate academic leadership with societal leadership. And I'm going to expand on these, so I'll be a bit brief at this point. But this idea of integrated leadership leads to creates a kind of cognitive diversity that can help to fuel successful innovation. The second duality is the integration of academic purpose, creation of new knowledge, with societal purpose, solving problems. So those are listed in color there for really big ideas. That latter one, the integration, is so important because it creates new knowledge while applying it to practical challenges. So when we put those ideas together on the screen and look at them, they seem quite separate, and often they are. So as you've already surmised, the whole point of HIBAR research projects is to take those things that are so often separate and to bring them together. And when we do that, well, we think it's important because we can kind of view these overall ideas from a couple of lenses. For example, we use the words highly integrative to talk about the idea of bringing all these ideas into one place. And that's the H and the I of the HIBAR acronym for this kind of research. And we also use the word basic and responsive in that acronym just to emphasize the fact that these ideas aren't opposites. They can actually be very close together and work together and be synergistic. And so when we get that ideal synergy, when we bring all those ideas together into one research project, not one department, not one lab, but one actual research project, that's what we mean by HIBAR research. It's just a little bit tricky to do, but it's a lot of fun to do, and it works really well. And we just really enjoy an opportunity to hear from others that are doing basically the same idea in many different ways and sharing creative thoughts for advancing this. And that's best done in a kind of a grouping of people where we aim to have this huge impact through cooperative sharing. So the HIBAR Research Alliance is nothing fancy. It's just an alliance of people like those on this call today who are interested in sharing ideas and thoughts about how to advance HIBAR research. So we describe ourselves as being a distributed, organized network of experienced volunteers who are united in their support of HIBAR research projects. And our goal is to help cause HIBAR research projects to happen at a higher rate. And so specifically, we talk about the idea that when we were getting started in 2020, we got a lot of advice that said, yeah, we do a lot of HIBAR research at our campus. Certainly, it's true at my campus, and all the campus members say that they do, but it could be more. It's probably about one project in 20, or was about one project in 2020. And the thought is, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could have it be one project in 5? And we absolutely believe we can without losing anything, just gain, all win. We believe that that's possible. And in turn, that will help universities to respond more effectively to societal needs while also increasing the overall excellence of their diverse research portfolio. So achieving that goal, however, does require some adjustments in academic culture. Not the ones we cherish, but some aspects of the culture aren't completely aligned with that goal now, and we think that's an area for academic improvement. And that's one of the reasons, of course, that we have this webinar series, and it brings us to our discussion today, which I'm very much looking forward to. So it's such a pleasure to welcome Majid Mohseni and also Irving LeBlanc, and their description of the design and implementation of innovative solutions for drinking water quality and community health in Indigenous and rural communities. As we've just been discussing, this work obviously integrates both academic and community leadership, which is so exciting, and the work discovers new ideas while addressing crucial societal problems. So on that note, I'll wrap up my brief words here. Kira, thanks again for the introduction, and I'll hand back over to you, please. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lauren. Now I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters. Dr. Majid Mohseni is a professor of chemical, biological, and environmental engineering at the University of British Columbia. He's internationally renowned as an expert in drinking water quality and advanced water treatment processes. Majid is the scientific director and co-founder of Community Circle. Also joining us is Irving LeBlanc, former Director of Infrastructure at the Assembly of First Nations and longtime advocate for Canada's First Nations in the areas of housing, infrastructure, drinking water, and source water protection. Irving is currently the chair of the board and co-director of Community Circle, and he's been involved in its governance and evolution since 2008. So over to you.
We didn't get past that one. So anyway, as Kara was introducing the work that being done, what we'll be presenting today is delivering sustainable solution with next generation partnerships and ecosystems, and it's in pursuit of water health equity, and that's very important for Indigenous and rural communities. So next slide. So as we've already started off saying that myself, I'm from the Ottawa area. I live in the city of Ottawa, and I always acknowledge the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquins, and whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. And I'll just repeat again, unless Majid wants to do it, but we also acknowledge the traditional ancestral and unceded territory of the Musqueam people, whose land the UBC Vancouver campus is situated. For millennia, the Musqueam people have passed on their culture, history, and traditions from one generation to the next on this site. The next slide. So a little bit of background on the work that we do, and then who the target groups are. Essentially, many times the feds lump everybody into one group called Indigenous Peoples of Canada, and that's what they like to use. Essentially, it's a grouping of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis across the country, and we use some of the information from the Census, Canada Census, StatsCan, and the areas that I advocate in particularly, but we do advocate for the Indigenous population. First Nations in 2021 was over a million people, living in Canada, and that for first time surpassed the 1 million mark in the census. And really that points out to it is one of the fastest growing segments of our population here in Canada. In Inuit and Métis numbers are somewhat lower than that, as indicated by the growth from 5 years between 2016 and 2020, grew by 10% over that 5-year period. And the map there, which was I think that's a little bit of trouble looking for it. It gives you just a idea of where First Nations are located, situated in Canada. Essentially, it's a First Nations map. There are Métis settlements in Manitoba, Manitoba being the homeland of the Manitoba Métis, and some settlements across other provinces, notably in Alberta. There's some Métis settlements, but essentially all those green dots are First Nations, and there are 634 First Nations in Canada. Most, well, pretty well scattered, but as you can see, a lot of them are closely to the border, but a lot of them are also to the north of Canada, and that's where it represents our traditional homeland, our traditional territories, where a lot of our First Nations have their unceded lands. So next slide. And then the population is quite younger than the non-Indigenous population, an average age of 33.6 compared to 41.6 for non-Indigenous. 25% of the Indigenous population is under 14 years of age. So that really kind of points out to I would say the opportunities there for accessing youth and young adults in terms of reaching out to new ideas. And some of the work that Majid will be talking about is they're embracing new technology. They're quite easy to take, accept innovative technologies that they fully understood, because that's what they do. They're always on the cell phone. They're always on their Game Boys and all that. So I think that's a kind of an indication of the growth of Indigenous population. It's going to reach 2.5 and 3.2 million in the next 20 years. So that's quite interesting point that we don't have the statistics on how each of those groups are going to grow, particularly the First Nations. As I said earlier, 634 First Nations communities, anywhere from 50 to more than 10,000. There's some large First Nations in Southern Ontario, Kahnawake, Akwesasne, Six Nations, and on a study that was done back in 2011, determined that of those 634 First Nations, 784 they had water systems, 497 wastewater systems, and significantly 14,500 on wells, and that will come up later. 42,000 on septics, almost 54% of the homes on reserve, and 13,427 cisterns. Why those numbers? Always people ask why 784 does not match the number of 634 First Nations, because some First Nations do have multiple water sources, multiple water wells, or multiple plants. That's why there's more water systems than First Nation communities. And so next slide, please. So challenges today faced by First Nations, and you follow the news about challenges First Nations access to safe drinking water. And in 2015, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, committed to eliminate all drinking water advisories by 2021, March 21st, 2021. Unfortunately, that mark was missed. There are still 28 long-term drinking water advisories in 26 communities, and some of these are actual like communities with many large populations, and they have had serious issues not having access to safe water for over 20 years, 1995, most of them before that. And these communities have had actual members, children growing up into adults not having had access to safe water from the tap. They may have a system, but the water is contaminated and they've never had opportunity to use that tap water. They can't even bathe in it or cook in it. And so big issue is the thousands of individual systems, and these are wells or cisterns where water is delivered to the house. And generally, some of them have short-term advisories that occur regularly. And the point of that is that short-term advisories, when they stay on for longer than 1 year, become long-term drinking water advisories. So it's kind of a challenge for the First Nations and the funding agency to continue to keep those numbers down and not have them expand beyond the 26 communities. The chart on the bottom there is the number of long-term drinking water advisories, or added, lifted or added, but you can see the difference between the new ones and the ones that have been in place for quite a while. So slowly trying to get them down. As you can see, the 23, 24 is trying to get them hard, but we're hoping that the long-term drinking water advisories will become zero at some point. And we all understand that itinerant water advisories, like in most other municipalities, they can be addressed very quickly, some within 2 weeks. Unfortunately, in First Nations, it's a lot longer than that. Next slide, Majid. So the challenges, for sure, as you saw on the map, there's quite a few remote locations of communities that are really fly-in. So the only way you can get to them is fly-in, or in the winter, you can get in there through winter roads, and they have to build those winter roads every year. Problem with that is with climate change, those winter roads are not lasting much longer, as we've seen them before. Warmer winters that hampers the delivery of goods and services, particular goods that First Nations depend on having delivered this one window during the year. And if they run out during the year, then it's a high cost of flying in goods when they run out. So appropriate technologies and solutions. I think many of the current technologies are kind of legacy systems that are basic water plants that were being designed for many years. Slowly moving into new innovative technologies, and we'll see some of that work that Majid and his team are doing at the University of British Columbia. And the big problem always is lack of adequate, predictable, sustainable funding. Lack of recognition of First Nations inherent in treaty rights. Treaty rights include access to water, safe water, and it's also part of the UN right to water. So it's a universal need, right? Also, insufficient engagement on issues that directly affect First Nations. A lot of times it's directly consultation is not happening very much, but always a challenge to make sure that First Nations are engaged and consulted on issues that affect their rights and daily issues. I guess a big point with this presentation here is the operators' issues. A lot of times, operators' roles and responsibilities suffer from lack of recognition, and that they only come to the surface, I guess, when something happens in the community. So when something bad happens, water goes bad. So all of a sudden they're on the top of the list of who's responsible for that. So currently the work that I have been doing before I left the Assembly of First Nations is the development of new safe drinking water, wastewater, and related infrastructure legislation for First Nations. Essentially, there's no provincial jurisdiction on water and wastewater on First Nations. There are no regulations. Many regions, many First Nations have adopted using provincial standards, not regulations, but standards. So strengthening funding commitments to provide adequate and sustainable funding for water services on First Nation lands comparable to services received on non-First Nations communities. So these are things that are included in the draft legislation, or this draft at this point. National standards, looking at, as I said, there's no standards right now. There's not even a national federal standard. They're just guidelines. And same with wastewater. There's the wastewater services on effluent on First Nations is something that's come through the DFO. First Nation do have to make sure that they're not dumping deleterious substances into waters for the fish to be able to live. So, and providing pathways for ongoing engagement. So there's some issues, there's some commitments there, but there's no really strong commitment. So next slide, Majid. I think this is where Majid takes over, and thanks for paying attention at this point, Miwich.
Thank you, Irving, for the background and introduction of the issues and challenges and opportunities. So I'm going to switch the gear towards talking about the Community Circle program and the activities we are doing, and provide some examples. So the program initially started back in 2008 as a research network or a national research network called a Strategic Network funded by Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada under the name BREZO WaterNet. And now currently we are named as Community Circle, fully non-profit organization, UBC being a member organization of this, but totally independent, funded by the government and communities and partners from private sector and foundations as well. So some of the fund comes from government, but also we receive funding and we apply funding through various partners to allow us to meet the goals and achieve the objectives that we have as part of the Community Circle program. So basically, what has evolved as a program was really, as I mentioned, from a research network or purely research from university to something that is community driven, is driven by the communities. Communities are at the center of the program, and really focusing on the needs of the communities rather than what we as the researchers want the communities to have or what we think the communities must have. And so the shift of focus was something that we have been working and allowed us to evolve from where we were to where we are now. And naturally, that requires some culture change within the type of work that we have been doing. So really focusing on the right science and also collaboration as opposed to competition among various stakeholders, and also working in very close collaboration with rights holders, community rights holders as well. So if you look at what the communities want and basically need, is really the first thing is that they want to be the ones who are participating in the development of the solution, or they are involved in the co-creation of the solutions. In a simple term, they want to be the ones who decide on what to buy and what to choose and what to develop. And that leads to the ownership of the problems or ownership of the solutions. When the communities are participating in this development, they will own it and they will take pride of that. So in many of our activities with communities, we noticed that the communities, once they have been involved, they really want to champion that, to bring that solution to other communities as well. So that's the desire they have. Also, what it means is that they want to buy the outcome as opposed to a product or a service. I think that's a very important factor, because we as researchers or as industry in general often try to just bring a technology or a solution that we have in mind. We want to implement them, whereas the community is looking at the outcome that this solution is going to bring. And that, if you look at it from that lens, that shifts the conversation from product language or service-oriented language to human language, to really seeing the experience that the community will have throughout the process. And that good experience is going to lead to sustainable products or sustainable outcome. So really, through this, our mandate or our goal has been to really support communities and their goals through open innovation process. Just to highlight what it means by open innovation. So if you think about various stakeholders that can be involved in the development of the solution, one thing we must have, and we don't see that in this graph, is really the communities. So the communities must be at the table. As I mentioned, they should be at the center of that solution development, because they are the rights holders. Everybody else is a stakeholder, so they must be there. And if you think about the innovation space that can exist within this framework and with all the groups involved, all of them will have some kind of a knowledge. I in here stands for idea, and K stands for knowledge. So they all have certain knowledge, certain ideas that actually can help, and they can bring those within this innovation space really to this platform and bring it together, so the right ideas can come together. And as a result of all these, the solutions can be generated with the community really being there at the table with all other stakeholders as well. So with this model of community circle that we developed, we've been involved in multiple projects over the years. And as part of these projects with various communities, we've been able to actually lift a number of long-standing boil water advisories at much lower cost that was originally anticipated by the government or by industry. And if you look at the dates for those projects, some of them were in the middle of the COVIDs. In fact, we were able to actually work with communities, really facilitating that development of the solutions that was actually very successful and led to some positive outcomes. And through this process, we actually were able to bring a number of technologies directly from the lab to the community, to the full-scale implementation, bypassing a lot of hurdles, a lot of typical processes that are involved when a technology wants to be commercialized, really. And I'll give one example of that in a few minutes. Another thing that Erwin just mentioned earlier, the focus on water operators and youth has been a core of our program. And as part of this, we've been working with the operators towards best support, better strategies to support them. And one way was really to bring digital technologies or basically information technologies to really support them in their trainings, in their day-to-day operations. And we developed a module, a digital platform called OWL. We call it Operators Walkthrough Lab, which is available on basically app stores through either iPhone or iOS or Android. And this is the QR code. If you have a chance with your basically cell phone, you can take a picture of that and use it, or this presentation will be available later for it to be utilized. So why this OWL? Why this digital platform for training and operator support? Is that a lot of operators, as Bing mentioned, they are located or they are in communities that are very far from training centers. So traveling for the operators is very important and very difficult. Often there's only one operator at the community, so they can't take time off to go to the training centers. So time commitments, they often need to leave their families to go to these training centers. Often many of these training modules are very purely theoretical. So the individual is not able to connect with the materials that they basically learn on paper. And also the funding that is related to support the operators to bring it to larger urban areas for the training and so on. So all of those are barriers for the operators to receive the right training and the right support. And also for the communities, if they are interested, there are no way or no mechanism for them to get some information about their water system, about their information, about the resources that they have available. So the OWL allows for that. So basically, anyone can utilize it. It's a free app that you can utilize. Anyone, any community members, any operators, or even students at schools can actually basically utilize that to gather the information, to learn about their water system. And also, it's something that allows us to utilize these digital, basically, advancement and innovations that are in there for us to be able to make significant impact on something that is very much needed. And all it needs is either a cell phone or a tablet. We tried that in a conference full of operators, and within a couple of minutes, all of them were able to actually utilize this successfully. So very easy to utilize. So this is something that we are focusing a lot in our current program to try to bring these digital innovations to really support communities in their basically goal of having access to clean and safe drinking water. Now, I'm going to shift this focus a little bit to tell you a little bit about this innovation path or a story that we had to bring a product or a technology or a solution from a lab to the community. Really, as I mentioned, bypassing a lot of commercialization hurdles. So this is the story of a community in central British Columbia. It's about 13 hours drive from Vancouver. And of course, if you want to fly, it's going to be 1 hour flight to nearest town and then 4 hours drive from there as well. So the nearest community or hardware store, if I call it, it's about 80 kilometers on a logging road. And the logging road is such that you cannot even easily travel there. You actually need to have a radio to be able to connect with the logging trucks that run through these roads, and could be quite dangerous. And in certain times of the year, of course, these roads are impassable. So the community has a number of homes, and not very many, less than 10 homes. It's next to a river, so the water contains organics content. It has particulate matter, and also it has E. coli and fecal coliform. So those are some of the contaminants that are generally present in natural waters. Also the quality fluctuates because the river conditions changes due to the weather and so on. So the community had been on boil water advisory for 14 years, and that's been the issue that the community had. The previous attempt by the government in the late 90s simply failed because they tried or engineers at the time tried to parachute a technology which was, even in today's standard, is not viable solution for a remote community. That's an ceramic membrane filters, and very complicated and requires a lot of supplies, a lot of chemicals for maintaining and cleaning it up. So it failed within 6 months. And that led to the boil water advisories in the community. So the first task we had when the community called us really to work with them was really to determine what the challenge was. So clearly inappropriate technology choice, considering or not considering the challenges that the community had with respect to operation and resources, and also the necessary support that would exist. So these were the challenges that exist. So our task was really to learn from the community, to approach it by understanding what the challenges were, what the needs of the communities were, and also be able to experience how the community is feeling and learn from the elders in the community, really what the solutions could look like and should look like from their point of view as well. So what we learned is that it needs to be simple to operate. We should not have chemicals to use, because those were the issues of the failures. And also we need to have the proper operator support, proper maintenance there, and also operational and resources were very critical from that aspect. So those were the goals that we had. So through the community circle approach, we were able to approach it by actually having to work with the communities to deal with the issues that they have, and also look at the technology that is available. So when we present that technology to the community, which we call it biological ion exchange, it was really something that the community wanted to try. At the time, neither the government, neither the industry was willing even to entertain the idea of using that technology. So what this technology is, without really going into a lot of details, conventional ion exchange utilizes basically resins that we can have in various applications in water or softeners similar to that. So the organics that are in the water, which called natural organic matter, would be basically taken up by these resins. And then, of course, the chloride that is on the resin is released. So this is a conventional technology, but the challenge for the small community is that it requires regeneration or replacement of these capacities by the resins using highly concentrated brine. And that's a challenge for a remote community, because management of these brines is an issue. Rather, biological ion exchange is really allowing this system to operate and allow bacteria or biofilm to grow on the surface of these resins. And so what it means is that no need for regeneration, no need for brine or salt solutions, and that actually reduces the chemical usage. So when we presented this to the community, because this is the technologies that we have been using in our lab at UBC, the community really was keen to try it out. So with their basically pull, the desire from their sides, the government agreed for us to pilot the technology in their in the community. And really the entire process was from the time that we started this project in the lab to the final commissioning was about 5 years, and that led to full commissioning or installation of the technology. And you see different stages that we have seen there. So a few pictures to share. The piloting that was done at the community, as I mentioned, we had a year-long pilot at the community, and that basically allowed us really to determine how much we can capture the organics that are contaminant of the concern in the water to make the water suitable for proper disinfection and usage by the community. Not going into a lot of details, we can see that the blue lines are the organics levels in the river, and the green lines are the ones that we got after the treatment in the pilot. And we can see that nearly 60% removal of the organics, and that was sufficient for us to achieve, to bring it to the level that would be acceptable from the the community's perspective and the quality perspective. And we successfully commissioned this. And after the commissioning, we operated the system over a long term, over 2 years. And we can see that it actually surpassed our expectation. So again, these blue circles are showing what the inlet concentrations are, and the outlet concentrations are generally around 2 or below 2. And that was, again, sufficient for us to have the quality that would be bringing the necessary requirements for the communities. So with the installations, of course, that ended the boil water advisory. But this required a lot of people, a lot of groups. Not only we from the Community Circle program were involved, but also the industry, the consulting companies, and the health authorities and the government, but more importantly, the nation and the operators that were involved. So they were part of the process. They were involved since the beginning as well. And a lot of people, a lot of meetings, visiting to the facilities to be able to determine how the system would work even before it went to the community. And this picture, there are 3 operators from the community actually came to the field to be able to see how it works, to the manufacturing facility to see how it works. And as I mentioned, all along, the operator was involved. So our students visited the community, they worked with the operators. So this not only allowed the operators to learn and understand the system, but also for the students to gain firsthand experience. I think that was very critical as well. And for the operators themselves to be able to work together, to be able to have better understanding of the system. So cross mentorship and that existed among the operators as well. As I mentioned, with the community going through the process, they were very proud of what achieved. And in the end of 2018, they had the cutting of the ribbon and really celebrated the successful of the project and implementation of the technology that came straight from a university lab. And they, after 14 years, they put a chainsaw and cut the sign and replaced it with a welcome sign in front of the community. So that was a big achievement, something that the community was proud of that. And our students were also achieved something that they wanted to have, because something that they got being involved in something that had direct impact on the community. And not only the community was proud of it, not only us as researchers were proud, but also other stakeholders that were involved. The government took on this, put Twitter, or now currently X, messages saying that they lifted the boil water advisory. The consulting company actually received multiple awards for being part of this innovative process to support this implementation of innovative process. And this is one article that came from the Consulting Engineers of Canada that shows the award that this consulting company received for being one of being among the team that is involved. And this is a quote directly from the operator that really shows that how he felt and how he wanted the dream that he had for the community, and the pride that he had for being involved in as part of this whole process. So all these came as a result of meetings, engagement with the communities. I think this is very important, that this was not an easy task. A lot of meetings, a lot of interactions, a lot of travels to the community, really to build the trust, because it is important to build the trust by going and sharing time with the communities. Our students went there, even shared meals with the community members, with the elders, to be able to build that relationship, to capture what they view as being important for their community. Attention to youth and really supporting youth in the communities is also a very important part of our mandate and our efforts. So every community that we have been involved in, we brought youth and we try to engage youth in the community, not only to support them in their journey, in their education, but also get them interested in water and perhaps interested in the higher or post-secondary education. We brought multiple groups of youth to the UBC or to our universities to be able to actually show them and demonstrate how the water can be treated or what the value of higher education could be. Now, our effort a lot is on filling the gaps, meaning that decentralized system. As Irving mentioned earlier, thousands of communities are not part of the larger community systems. They are individual systems that require support, and they are striving to have some kind of a solution that would be sustainable to them. So by engaging our students, we've been able to support them and work with them as well. So how we are going to scale this one up is really to bring the communities themselves to be our anchor groups or anchor centers. So the communities that have been successful in their and achieving their goals, they are now the anchor centers. They are the ones who can actually work with us to support other communities as well. So we call them anchor centers. And in this journey, of course, we are linked and connected to multiple institutions, not only within Canada, but also outside Canada as well, and internationally. So the journey is going on, and we are looking forward to having more partners, more communities, and more organizations to join us in our effort as well. So with that, I'll stop here and entertain any questions between myself and Irving, if there are any. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Majid and Irving. That was an excellent presentation. We do have some questions here from our audience, so I'll take a few of those questions now, and perhaps we'll use these questions as our way to wrap up your key messages. So this is clearly requires a lot of very kind of one-to-one relationships developed to co-lead a project like this. How long did it take to develop the relationship enough that you could really start working together on this project? And knowing what you know now, would you have any recommendations on how to accelerate this type of relationship development for future projects?
Maybe I'll start, and then if Irving has any comment, he can add. Certainly, it's not something that we can just go to the community and assume that the community basically can, or we can have this relationship. Communities are always welcoming researchers or people who are willing to work with them. So one thing I've learned is that they're all welcoming. They're also forgiving of our, basically, if we do make mistakes in the process. As long as we are genuine, we accept that the fact that we may miss something. But we can't expect that this by one time meeting them or showing up to the community, our relationship is built. So it needs time. And as I mentioned, for our students really to go and not only basically to share a meal with them. I think that it's like, if I use the analogy, even we want to start a friendship with someone, we just don't assume that that friendship can develop easily. It just, we'll go to coffee, multiple coffees, and basically meetings in order to build that relationship. So that's very important. And unfortunately, sometimes as researchers, we can assume, or we do not see that as being necessary when we will work with communities. And also our grants are time limited. So we may have 2 years of grants. We are rushing to finish the project. But so there are some mismatch between what it takes to develop the communities relationship and what the grant cycles are. How to speed up the process? Use the existing relationship. So if there are others who are part of, who have good relationship, we probably can use their relationship to actually build our own. But we can't be just using them for that in and out kind of relationship. Irving, do you want to add something?
Yeah, definitely. All of what Majid mentioned in terms of establishing the relationships and gaining trust, very important. Make sure that the community meetings are taking place. But I think one of the benefits of these projects is the involvement of the funding agency. they had really good relations with the funding agency, and I think that's kind of unique to that. But it's I think something that needs to be built into it. That needs to be built into it because it's sometimes the projects do cost a bit of money, even though there's support from industry like you had here and from research area, but also commitment to long-term operation and maintenance that the First Nation needs to be comfortable that even though there's a good solution, there's got to be a long-term commitment to it.
And building on that question, based on your experience with this project, Majid, do you see anything that universities can do from either a structural or a support perspective to make it easier to develop these long-term relationships with community partners?
It's a very good question. So every university certainly has a mandate to work with communities. I mean, be relevant to their communities that are around them. And for us, UBC is the same thing as well. So there are strategic plans in the case of Indigenous communities, Indigenous strategic plans as well. What is really important to have the basic support that exists. So, for example, in building a relationship or starting a relationship with community, certainly having a system in place that supports that or provide or facilitates that relationship building is something that could be very important and is almost essential. But also, there are some other aspects. I know from innovation perspectives is very important. Unfortunately, many universities don't have, is when we want to go and try a technology or work on a solution with the community, in collaboration with the community, we need to consider what is it there for the community as well. Unfortunately, in the past, things are changing now, but in the past, it's been that researchers would go use the community to develop solutions, to pilot their solutions, and the patent belongs all to the university, or industry gets the full benefit of that. So it is absolutely important for the communities to be part of that as well. So if there is anything that is going to come out of it, the communities need to be equal partners in all aspects, from the basic development of the projects to anything that comes out when the technologies are commercialized.
Thank you. Irving, question for you. If you can share a few ways that we've been able to kind of share this new knowledge coming out of these projects widely so others can apply the lessons, and also have these knowledge mobilization efforts driven by Community Circle been effective in unlocking additional funding or attention from government to really address some of these issues?
Well, most definitely, I think the work that Majid and Kayvan have been doing in terms of going around and presenting at water symposiums. I know the organization I worked with left. We did. We were on the 6th annual symposium, and the follow-up was the 7th annual symposium, just early April, and Majid and then his team and the operators presented there. So I think part of it is just getting the word out and working hard to get the alliances, as Majid mentioned. The centers I think will figure prominently as we move forward, and slowly start to engage those center representatives, saying, okay, your role is to contact the First Nations, identify opportunities within those areas. So it starts kind of I would say snowball at this point, but starts to go out and establish how a community circle concept really works. And I think that's really the way that First Nations like to do things. They want to be involved. They want to be involved right from the beginning, and they want to have ownership on the project. So I think the concepts there are working. Is to continue working with them and demonstrate that there are opportunities and it works. So
And maybe one final question, Irving. You mentioned the role of youth in your community and the next generation of leadership within Indigenous communities. How do the youth in your communities perceive either their opportunity or perhaps their responsibility to lead their communities toward adopting technologies that could enhance health equity or improve quality of life in other areas to address other issues that they're facing?
Well, I think we have a really excellent example and project, and I think Majid and Kevin can add to it, and that's the utilizing with the OWL project that Majid mentioned, utilizing the operator from that community, from two communities, from she's going to kill me, Kelowna, right? Hope that's right, Kelowna, and another nation up, First Nation up further north on British Columbia, actually using the operators to be part of that whole developmental group, and they are quite very comfortable, and they're showing to the operators, like we mentioned. I think we attended the operators national forum, full of operators, circuit rider trainers, so then demonstrating that it's not a bunch of pardon everybody, white-haired guys standing up there. It's the young people. They are embracing this, and they're very comfortable in holding on to their handheld devices or tablets, saying, "Oh yeah, I'm familiar with this. This is how it's going to be done." But also, I think seeing that artificial intelligence and training using augmented reality is way in the future, because they're doing it every day, playing on their game boards and that kind of stuff. So it comes easy to them, I think. And one of the things that we strive to do is get more young people involved in the industry, making careers, water careers as a career.
Wonderful. With that, we're right at time. Irving and Majid, thank you both so very much for sharing your experience with us today. Thank you to everyone who attended the webinar, and Lauren as well. Thank you for joining to give an overview of the ambitions of the HIBAR Research Alliance. I hope everyone got a lot out of today's webinar. And again, it'll be posted. The recording will be posted with some key takeaways on the website. Thanks, everyone.